Hi, I'm Steven. You can now watch UCF TV 24 hours a day on Bright House Digital Channel 1.
Hello and welcome to the Global Perspective Show. I'm John Bercia, Special Assistant to the President for Global Perspectives. Our guest today is Dr. Hussein Amir-Ahmadi, Professor at Rutgers University and also the President of the American Iranian Council. Welcome.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you here today.
It's a great pleasure to be at CFI.
Tell us a little bit about your position at Rutgers, and just to start.
Yeah, I'm a professor there at the Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy. I used to be until last year director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies, and because of my sabbatical year at Oxford, where I am now, I gave up that job at the moment, for now at least. I have an organization called the American Iranian Council that with a group of distinguished Americans we established back in 1991, and it focuses on U.S.-Iran relations. I'm president of the organization, and our first chairman was the late Cyrus Vance. Our current chairman is Senator Bennett Johnston, who used to be the senator of the state of Louisiana for 26 years. And we have Ambassador Thomas Pickering on the board, and Dana Shalala on the board, and so many other very, very distinguished Americans.
Good. Well, that gives us a starting point to the next question, which is, what is your assessment of the current state of U.S.-Iranian relations? And then we'll follow up with some additional questions.
Well, the U.S. and Iran have been able to maintain a status quo of no war and no peace. After Iran was taken to the UN Security Council, that status quo has become increasingly untenable. And both sides now realize that they really need to find a better option to this status quo of no war, no peace. It doesn't serve the American interests, and it hasn't been serving the interests of the Iranian people, even though it has served the regime to some extent. So in both capitals, Tehran and Washington, there is a new realization that they have to move beyond this. In the Iran side, still their best option is no war, no peace. So therefore, they are trying to do everything in their power to maintain that, except that they are also ready to move beyond that a little bit toward peace, but not normalization of relation with the U.S., but rather a better relation, a more improved situation. And that means that while they would not accept ambassadors from the U.S., they will be probably prepared to do a few things here and there to mend relations and create more exchanges, perhaps compromise on a few issues. If President Obama was to change his mind vis-a-vis the country and the Islamic Republic and so on. So they are very seriously and cautiously and attentively watching President Obama's mouth and his administration to see if there is a change of policy to come. The U.S. side also, I may say that I think the Obama administration will indeed sooner or later remove this status quo of no war, no peace. That would not be, I believe, an option on the table. I think the U.S. will give Iran a clear choice of peace or war. I mean by war, I don't mean really war, because that's not an option. But they will be probably giving the Iran a peace option and pay the price for it, but they will also make Iran to pay a price. So I think that's how the administration is thinking in terms of moving forward with Iran.
Well, why do you think the regime in Tehran is more receptive now? Is it because there has been a change in the U.S. government, or has there always been some willingness on the part of the regime to improve the relationship between the two countries?
Well, Iran is divided on this issue, has been divided from the day one. I'm talking about the Islamic Republic itself. It hasn't been a monolithic society, a group of the people within the regime, from the leadership, still oppose very violently any normalization or better relation with the U.S. They think that they see the U.S. Not only just in a Cold War mindset, but also as an imperialist, domineering, aggressive power, and that is bent to destroy the revolution, Islam, the regime, and so on. But these are a minority. I think the majority of the Iranians, I'm talking particularly the leadership, is increasingly more in favor of a dialogue and openness, because they don't think that the status quo can be maintained anymore. This group has been around for a while, but increasingly their number has increased. Their commitment to a better relation has increased, although they still haven't got to that qualitative stage of really making this to happen. So I think in Iran's side, it is a combination of this different perspectives on the U.S., but also sanctions have had an impact, and it is having tremendous impact now that the UN has also joined. It has become increasingly difficult for the Iranian investors, particularly, to deal with the foreign companies, foreign banks, and insurance companies, and essentially a lot of these roads are now closed. So if you are in Iran and if you are an investor, you feel very constrained, tremendously constrained. The government also is feeling increasingly constrained, particularly now that the oil prices decline. There is tremendous pressure on the government as well, and I think this opening with the U.S. will give them some way out of this economic pressures as well. But the reason is more political than economic.
Well, let's talk about that. We have national elections coming up in Iran later this year. Give us two scenarios. If the current president is reelected, what might the relationship be? And then if someone else comes in, would it change in a different way?
Yeah. First, President Ahmadinejad, despite all his rhetoric and also statements about Israel and the Holocaust that we all have condemned, he has been increasingly open to a dialogue with the United States, more so than the previous administrations in Iran. He has expressed interest in a dialogue with the administration. Here he has proposed that Iranian planes and the American planes fly directly between Tehran and New York or Washington. He has negotiated with the U.S. over Iraq and Baghdad, and he is also saying that he will be open to entertaining the idea of an intersection, U.S. intersection in Iran. So Ahmadinejad, despite what we think about him, he has indeed been a little bit more pragmatic than we really realize. I believe, however, Ahmadinejad has his approach has been a two-pronged approach. In the one hand, be tough on the nuclear side, and then soft in everything else. So that's one area that he has really sort of like been very tough. He says no compromise there, but every place else, I have no problem. You want me to give up on Hamas and Hezbollah, I will, but not on the nuclear. You want me to give up on the peace process, I will, but not on the nuclear. So every avenue is open except for this one. That's where his approach now is, and I think that will not change if he gets re-elected. That's the way he sees things. The reason is because Ahmadinejad is very much connected to the Revolutionary Guard, to the Basijis, to the more like the group that controls the country. And these people are very, very afraid of their existence, their survival. And they don't see, however, the survival being threatened by internal forces. They see this an external threat. And they also see that the external threat could be minimized if Iran was in a position to defend itself, or at least to have a deterrent, force. And they always keep saying that if Saddam Hussein had a bomb, this wouldn't happen to him. That kind of stuff.
So that would happen if President Ahmadinejad continued. But if someone else came into office,
yeah, I mean the other someone else. First, I have to say that it is 50-50 whether Ahmadinejad comes or not. I think his chance is 50.
It's that close.
Yeah, I tell you how the situation is at the moment. The only person that has really officially announced his candidacy is Ayatollah Karubi, who used to be the parliament speaker. He is a 70-year-old man, is very moderate in the middle. He has connections with the moderate, pragmatists, and with conservatives. sort of like somewhere in the middle. And then, but obviously, the society still is waiting to see if Khatami will come or the reformists will put someone, fill someone. I don't believe that they will, but you have to see. Now, if Khatami was to be a candidate, it is very possible that they will put another person instead of Ahmadinejad to run against him, because Ahmadinejad most likely will not win from Khatami. But the conservative group has a person called Ghalibaf, Muhammad Baqir Ghalibaf, who is the mayor of Tehran. He's a conservative with good credentials. Had done a great job in Tehran as a mayor. He was in the army for years, and he's a sort of like a modern conservative pragmatist, as they said themselves. They call themselves, rational principalists. They come with all kinds of definitions of who they are. But he's a member of that rational, principalist, and I think he has a good chance. He ran for the last presidential election. He came number 4. Karoubi also ran the last time, and he came 3. So he's not that, that's that too far off. I believe if Khatami runs, he will be running against Ghalibaf. If Khatami doesn't come, I believe Karoubi will be running against Ahmadinejad. That's how I see it. Again, Ahmadinejad was at one point very popular. It has become increasingly less so, and then the decline in oil will make him even less popular, because he doesn't have the money now to distribute, because he was doing this all the time, going to provinces and pay. And again, at the end of the day, Iranians are, of course, intelligent, and they're going to find out that that's not the way you run a country.
Well, let's say there is a change. At what point do you think the United States should begin to make its overture to Iran? Should that happen now? Should it happen after the election? How important is the timing in all of this?
Yeah, the timing is very important. Both the timing is important and who to speak is important, and of course what to say or what to do. On the timing, I think the United States should not wait. I tell you why. Should not wait, but it should not also simultaneously do grand stuff. It should do small little things until the election happens, and then thereafter takes that big step if it wants to. So from now to then, it should not really just simply stay out and say, no, I'm not going to deal with Ahmadinejad. Why? Because there's a danger there. If Ahmadinejad gets elected, then you are locked up with someone 4 years that you didn't want to talk to. And that person is going to take revenge. He's going to say, wait a minute, you didn't want me to get elected. Now is my time to pay it back. So U.S. has to be very careful in intervening in that way in this election. It should do small step things and see what happens. But, and this is another thing, U.S. doesn't need to speak to Ahmadinejad. It should not be speaking to Ahmadinejad. The person who in Iran has the authority on U.S.-Iran relations is not Ahmadinejad. It is the supreme leader. It's Khamenei. He doesn't have an election coming. he is the supreme leader for life. So that guy's got to be there no matter who is in the next president. I think the U.S. has to deal with him, not because he's going to be there forever, as long as he lives, but he is the power that is there. I mean, he's recognized as a person that, as the power on this particular issue particularly. So I think U.S. should basically, the President Obama should approach Khamenei as opposed to Ahmadinejad. But again, Khamenei is the authorizing force, but not an implementing force. So I'm sure Khamenei is going to find someone, most likely Ahmadinejad and his government, to implement whatever he authorizes. Which is like, basically Ahmadinejad then going to tell to his Minister of Foreign Affairs or someone else, go to here and there and negotiate. So in a way, we will not be talking to Ahmadinejad in any way if we start with. And then lastly, as I said, what to talk about is important. Up to the next election, President Obama has to be very guarded, cautious, and more conceptual. And then after that, he should really start a big push policy toward Iran, a policy that really makes everything black and white for the Islamic Republic. I think he should he should eliminate this no war, no peace option of the Islamic Republic. He should give them an option of either peace or war, but then go to the peace side and say, I am ready to pay a price for peace. And the price for peace that U.S. has to pay are, I think, of two types, broadly speaking. One would be a conceptual price. That is, a change of paradigm about Iran. We here see Iran as a dangerous nation, a nation that is irrational, a nation that does everything that is wrong and is after destroying us or harming us and that kind of stuff. And it is not helpful. We should change that, guardedly, and in a way to recognize their pride, recognize their history, their culture, and the fact that these are rational people and they are not just meant to destroy us and that kind of stuff. So that's a major first step, a conceptual change. We should be telling the regime that we don't want to interfere in your affairs, we don't want a regime change, we don't want to impose war on you. We mean well, that the U.S. is not your enemy, we are your friend as we used to be. Neither Israel is and not anybody else. So don't worry about it, and nobody is after destroying your regime and so on. And then the second part of it is real incentive, that is real good, but not the incentive that is little here and there. Iran is a rich country. It's a big country. You can't, if you give me $10 and I say, Hussein, this is $10, you do the answer, and so I say, listen, I'm not a beggar for $10. Okay? But if you give me $1 million, I would think about it. I said, wait a minute, this is a lot of money. You see, that is the case with the regimes as well. I mean, when you offer them a small piece, they have no incentive to take. But if you give them a big chunk of something, they start thinking. Besides, we have been in this country either talking to the regime or to the people. Both is wrong. You can't, jump over the regime and talk to the people, nor you can really afford to ignore people, because in Iran, whether we like it or not, the regime and the people are not necessarily the same. They are different. They are struggling with each other. So I think our approach has to be a two-pronged approach, simultaneously talking to the regime and to the people. And the package we give them, both conceptual and and economic, whatever that is, has to appeal to the people mostly, not just to the regime. We have to make it so attractive to the Iranian people that if the regime was to refuse it, the people will take it, which means that they will put tremendous pressure on the regime, come to the street and ask the regime to take it, because they know the other option would be war. And the Iranian people don't like it.
Let's talk a little bit about the nuclear issue. I know this is of great concern to you, and this has been one of the issues that Americans and others in the West have been especially focused on. Where do you think Iran is going with its nuclear program, and what do you think the risks are?
When the regime started to reviving its nuclear programs that existed during the Shah, after all, the Bushehr plant was, the Shah began that, and the nuclear reactors that Iran had originally, it came from Westinghouse of our own company, the American gave them. Then after the revolution, when they started, after the war with Iraq was a tremendous, terrible experience for Iran. That war basically showed the Islamic Republic that it is a lonesome state, it is an isolated entity there, that nobody cares about its existence and its survival, that everybody was helping Saddam Hussein while Saddam was the aggressor. It was destroying Iranian towns, it was killing Iranian people, it was the chemical Ali, and we destroy them. And yet we helped them. We helped Saddam Hussein, and Iraq during that war. That war became a turning point in Islamic Republic's experience with international community. They decided at the end of the war, listen, we are our own. Nobody got to help us. So better get organized. Let's put your defense together. And they began reviving the nuclear technology. They began putting more money in the military, building their conventional weapons, putting money on missile production, on building planes even, and helicopters. So they introduced a whole series of defense industries within the Revolutionary Guard. So they became increasingly involved in rebuilding the military, both conventional and strategic. Now, during the very early stages of this process, when it came to nuclear, there were three groups within the government that were talking about it. One group really wanted just nuclear energy. Their argument was that nuclear weapons are useless. The people who have it, they cannot use it, and it's just waste of time and waste of money, waste of energy. You don't just go about it. So they were just for nuclear energy. These were actually originally very powerful in the very beginning. They weren't like your average street people or just intellectuals. They were within the government. The second group within the government were like, listen, I think we should go all the way to bomb. You know, don't you see what Iraqis did, and what don't you see what the international community did? If you are not protected, you are finished. So they were not really interested in energy. They said, listen, don't take your time with this little, enrichments here and there. Then we have enough oil and gas, and don't take our. So go for bomb. The third group basically was arguing that neither bomb nor not just nuclear. We go for something called nuclear energy, civilian, with military capability. I think the second group increasingly became powerful. For one thing, pressure increased on the regime for bomb, and they began discovering all kinds of illicit underground activities, and then the regime became increasingly constrained, watched, and just wasn't easy. And nuclear capability means basically you go for energy, and then you will come to a point where your enrichment technology is enough in case you had to build a bomb. So that would take 3 or 4 months to do it. But you don't have to build a bomb. Don't have to build the bomb and put it out there, but have the capability. I think the second group has increasingly become more powerful in the regime. I believe, however, this is not a final finished decision. I believe, I have argued over and over, that it is possible still to stop the regime from going toward the capability and stop at the level of enrichment for civilian purpose. But unfortunately, the approaches the US and Israel and the others are taking in the region toward Iran are not the kind of approaches that will be helpful in that particular process. They will be actually forcing the Islamic Republic and strengthening the people who are for capability.
Well, if you wanted to have the most constructive approach, in your opinion, just very simply, what would it consist of? Three steps.
First, I think the US has to accept that a zero enrichment option is no option. We have to be realistic about it. Iran is a big country. Iran compares itself to, countries big at the region, okay? And Iran cannot be, I believe, stopped or expected not to do enrichment. I think US has to accept that zero enrichment is not an option. So however, US must make sure that the enrichment that Iran does is for civilian purpose. This means finding formulas that will be acceptable to international community and Iran. For example, one argument is a consortium. Now the question is, that is to say, make Iran enrichment just an international business, that we all will be a participant. US will have there, Russians will be there, Chinese will be there, French will be there, like participants. To the extent that Iran will have no control over the process. Now that proposal, to some extent, has been accepted, except that the argument is whether that should be on the Iranian soil or outside. Right. Now, Iran insists that it should be on Iranian soil. Others say, no, it should be outside. I believe there could be a combination. There could be a process where Iran could have like 10, 15, 20% of that inside, a small little factory here and there, and the rest go out. And that this also will be depending on, Iran could be conditioned on allowing for that consortium, that 50, 20% at home, on doing a lot of other things. For example, dropping its opposition to the peace, making gestures to Israel, stopping non-humanitarian aid to Hamas and Hezbollah, and basically opening the society in Iran for democratic change. So then, the average Iranians, who is neither anti-Israel or anti-American, will have a chance in the future to be a partner and a part of the political process and a part of the power process. And that will solve, that's a long-term process, okay? So I think there is a way to do it. We're
probably going to have to stop because we're running out of time, but I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll continue this in another discussion.
And I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. For the Global Perspective Show, I'm John Bercia. We'll see you next time.